I did a stream with a good friend of mine and famous Pokemon YouTuber, Madrybread, yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you go check it out. There's not much in the way of visuals to it, so just throw it on in the background and listen to it like a podcast. He likes to come on my channel and talk politics because, being a Pokemon YouTuber and Let's Player, he keeps his stuff relatively apolitical. That being said, I made a comment on that stream that I don't think came out right because, well, it's a stream. And I'm not that great without a script. I can only imagine what I'm going to sound like at Joe Biden's age, God. We were talking about professional wrestling, the WWE stuff, sports entertainment, the stuff that is half fake. I say half because while the outcomes of the matches, as well as other events, are scripted ahead of time, and the wrestlers all play characters, there's also a lot of serious physical work that goes into the actual performance of professional wrestling. Those are real hits, they suffer real injuries. Drybread described it, I think, as anime for Westerners, and I can see it because it follows a similar structure to a lot of the long-running shonen series. I said something along the lines of, wrestling is Shakespeare for people who are not predisposed to like Shakespeare. That makes it sound like I'm saying wrestling is for people who are too dumb to like Shakespeare, and that's absolutely not what I meant. Sorry about that, wrestling fans. I know very intelligent people do in fact enjoy wrestling. What I meant is more like this. There's drama of different levels of sophistication for different people. Wrestling drama may not be the most sophisticated, but that doesn't make it any less truthful or valuable. It's often said that religious instruction contains its truth for all levels of society regardless of intelligence or occupation or class, and that it's equally important that every person, regardless of their own natural proclivities, receive some source of wisdom. It's kind of like this. Most people don't read. Most people don't watch movies. Most people don't play video games. Most people don't watch anime or soap operas or reality TV or professional wrestling. But most people do at least one of those things. This still sounds like I'm insulting wrestling fans, doesn't it? I don't mean to. Maybe there's some correlation between wrestling fans and intelligence, but I think it's more like there's probably a strong correlation between wrestling fans and learning style. Consider this. The less sophisticated the genre of drama, the more it is like real life. The more sophisticated the genre of drama, the more it has abstracted out across multiple different experiences of real life, the fundamental lessons it's trying to impart onto the consumer. For example, wrestling is more like real life. It's relatable. We've all been in a competition in school where we've wanted to win, sports or otherwise, or we've had to deal with a bully or something like that. Meanwhile, a highly fantastical movie, like, say, Harry Potter, is not at all realistic, but it can amalgamate multiple instances of the same truths into a more archetypal story. The former is more relatable, but the latter applies across a wider scope. In imparting the fundamental truths is the whole point why cultures develop heroic narratives. Maybe you have a problem. You gotta pay your rent, or you have to get some food to eat, or you have to find a girlfriend or something. But that's not the real problem you have. The real problem is that problems exist. And your current problem is only one piece of the meta problem. If you can solve your current problem by embodying the qualities of a hero, as laid out for you by the media you consume, then great. But it's better to try and solve the meta problem, which means that you need to not simply understand how to be strong, or how to be smart, or how to be kind, but how to be all of the qualities of a hero. People think the proverb, give a man a fish and he eats for a day, teach a man to fish and he feeds himself for a lifetime, refers to the value of education, and it does. But even more so, it refers to humanity's constant quest to generalize wisdom such that as many people as possible can inherit it, while simultaneously making that wisdom apply to as many individual problems as possible. In other words, maximizing the number of pieces of the meta problem that it can tackle. And the goal is something like, it's not about how you solve your problem. It's about how do you behave that you can start actually tackling the meta problem of life itself. Wrestling imparts this knowledge in a great way. Like I said before, it's quite relatable. Wrestling stories are classic good versus evil, but they're not verbalized, they're not conceptualized, they're acted out instead. And wrestling teaches an important lesson about solving the meta problem of life. It's not enough to only be strong, or only be wise, or only be generous, or only be just, or only be kind. You have to be all of those things to be a good person. A hero has to be physically strong, but if the only virtue that a character in any narrative has is strength, then that character will either suffer and grow, or that character will stop being a hero. Unless you're John Cena, but that's why everybody except the youngest of kids find him boring. No offense. And we see this all the time in wrestling. The weak hero loses in a straight fight against the villain. A strong hero who isn't wise will get ambushed backstage by 3 dudes who kick the shit out of him. A strong, wise hero who isn't kind will discover that during a critical moment of the match, his best friend has turned on him, charged the ring, and bashed his head in with a folding chair. And the lesson that the audience is meant to take away is clear. You have to have all of these qualities to be heroic. And if the wrestling narrative is any good, the hero may be knocked off of his game for a while, but he'll learn, grow, heal up, and return to reclaim his belt in a climactic final battle, generally during the pay-per-view. The lesson's clear. Strength is your best virtue for a single battle, but relying only on strength for a long-term war is a sure way to lose that war. Of course, people like to cry that wrestling's fake, and the physicality of the sport aside, which is quite real, it doesn't actually matter if wrestling is fake, because it's a heroic narrative. Do you believe that movies are fake while you're watching them? If they're good, you're too sucked into the story to even consider it. And yeah, we psychologically react as if these things were real. When you lose a fight in real life with another person, your testosterone goes down and the winner's goes up. But if your favorite sports team loses a championship and you were really into the game, your testosterone also goes down in a similar way. And it's because sports is another similar heroic narrative. When you see the captain of a sports team holding up the championship cup, that's not only the hero of the team, his team is a team of heroes of an entire league of teams. It is simultaneously both the problem and the meta-problem. It's all a hierarchy. And as a cheeky aside, this is why any anarchist, communist, or socialist that talks about eliminating hierarchy and implementing pure undifferentiated equality across all 7-point-whatever billion humans will never actually manage to do it. They're fighting our biology. Consider that when we observe pack animals behaving in a specific way that creates a semblance of order within the pack, we view them through a human lens as following rules. But they're not actually following rules. There's actually not enough cognition there for them to be sophisticated enough to understand what a rule is. What they're doing is replicating a series of behaviors, partially from their genetics, and partially socialized into them from other pack members, that create a stable society of animals. And that's not the same thing. A rule is a human verbalization of a stable pack behavior. It is not the pack behavior itself. We see these behaviors in wolves, in lions, in chimps and gorillas. The alpha of the pack may rule, but the alpha who doesn't let others eat, or who doesn't engage in reciprocal grooming, or engage in play, or doesn't pay enough attention to his mates and his offspring, will see himself torn to pieces by the rest of the pack regardless of how strong he is. In other words, even animals have figured out on some small level that strength is not enough of a virtue on its own. So yes, hierarchy is in our biology, but also so is a concept of fairness and compassion, and even justice, which is where the fascists and the most cutthroat of corporatists have it just as wrong as the radical left. In much the same way, successful political regimes do not rely on only strength, because if they do, they become destabilized. This is why authoritarian regimes, regardless of their political affiliation, have to constantly conduct purges of even loyalists within the party. In much the same way, this is also why idealist revolutionaries who are totally not like the previous ones we promise, are always hidden authoritarians. And even if they are truly as good as they claim to be, they'll find themselves with a knife sticking out of their throat in the middle of the night, not long after they overthrow the liberal power structure that was protecting their life. This is because the archetypal hero, when brought to the sophistication level of the political realm, is the one who leads a stable, free, fair, and prosperous state. And just like every other level of sophistication, from pack alpha to sports hero to action star, strength is not enough. All heroic narratives, if they're actually worth consuming, will try to impart some kind of universal truth. Without spoiling too much here, the lesson of Harry Potter was, do not fear death so much that you become a tyrant in the name of safety. The lesson of Attack on Titan is, do not judge people by the sins of their ancestors. And now you know why the white fragility lefty types hate that show. Frozen's was, do not obsess over those things about you that you can't change. The Lion King's was, do not let past traumas prevent you from growing and confronting the tyrant. And that one, in fact, is one of the most common hero stories, from Hamlet to Rocky to professional wrestling. There's a reason why most ancient gods were gods of sight and speech. There's a reason the Christian God, or his angels, are often depicted by an all-seeing eye, and why God creates through speaking. Our ancient ancestors understood that the foremost qualities of a heroic ideal were vision and truth. That's why those heroes who lack those qualities, even if they're strong or smart or kind, end up suffering throughout their narratives. And in fact, the narratives that resonate the most with us are the ones where the heroes suffer and have their eyes opened and learn the truth as a result of it. These lessons need to be dramatized and acted out, not simply understood intellectually, because humans aren't actually intellectual creatures. We like to think we are, but we're really not. We often behave in ways that we don't fully understand, but we do it because we know it works. That's why I talked about animals earlier, because even our closest ancestors behave in ways that they don't understand, they only know that it works. We were behaving creatures long before we were thinking creatures, and we described those behaviors in drama long before we understood what they truly meant. And we still do that now. There's been an ongoing evolutionary feedback loop happening since before humans were even a distinct species. Our biology informs us of the basic heroic knowledge in a primitive way. That knowledge is diffused throughout all of us and our behaviors, creating the cultural hero myth. And then each of us on an individual level bring that back into ourselves and try to achieve the ideal through our own habits. At least you do that if you're trying to make a good faith effort to build and improve. And once you can articulate that ideal, then you have a hierarchy between the current you and the person you wish to be. And whenever you look up to another person, you're saying, in your subjective view of the current hierarchy that you inhabit, that the person you're looking up to is at the top of that hierarchy. This is who you will have to become in order to get to where you want to go. In my opinion, this is why the liberal individualist mindset, as opposed to the collectivist mindset of the socialist or the fascist, has created the most prosperous society that has ever existed. Because while we recognize that the collective is important, it's what sustains us, it's what socializes us. It's the driving force of the individual that reincorporates new knowledge back into the collective by embodying the next iteration of the hero. It's not enough for us to be told what good and evil are. We have to be shown examples of good and evil. We have to be shown their consequences. And we have to be shown it in a way that is engaging to us on a personal level. And that is, just like any other art form, the moral value of professional wrestling.